It's Sila the Poet again, part 3, clip 3. So now I'm going to discuss Latino theology. Okay, that is uh, the other part of my heritage, and so I'm going to speak about Latino theology. All right, so Latino theology is a reflection on the praxis of Latino people. Okay, it frames their struggle against the conditions of social exclusion and poverty of Latinos and uncovers ideological, racialized notions of cultural superiority from Anglo theological approaches. Okay? So, there was a concept called double mestizaje. Mestizaje in theology, and hermeneutics, and Christology. The first mestizaje was a rejection of mixed children, stained blood between white and who are considered inferior indigenous women, and they were considered morally suspect because of illicit sexual relations. The second mestizaje spoke about the invasion of Mexico by the U.S. and U.S. systematic attempts to erase Latino culture, history, ethnic identity, and present conditions of social marginalization. Okay? Theologians used mestizaje in theology to point out discrimination, social exclusion, attitude of resistance against the dominant Anglo assimilationist monoculture of the country, or whatever country, also a reclaiming of their mixed cultural heritage, the complex in betweenness in the identity for a nation as a people, name the mixed complex religious world of Latinos and religious symbols weaved together, indigenous, African, and Spanish European elements, find the divine legitimization of the existence of Latino peoples. Okay? And so these were some of the ideas that come from Latino theology. Okay? So, let's speak about a Latino theologian. There was one man named Gustavo Gutierrez. Okay? And in his concept and in his theology, he spoke about the idea that human beings are responsible for human destiny and how Jesus Christ liberates the human race from sin, which is the root of all disruption of friendship and of all injustice and oppression. Okay? And that God has a preference for the insignificant, marginalized, needy, unimportant, and the despised and the defenseless. Okay? Let's continue. There's also a person named Camilo Torres. He was the leader of a guerrilla group called the ELN in Colombia. And he gave Eucharist to those who fought for the Colombian state. Okay? There was also a person named Moroda Concesiajo. I hope I'm saying it right. Okay? And he was a liberationist priest. Okay? And he ended up being expelled for his support of different politics. Okay? There was also a theologian that I'm going to speak about, supposedly a woman, named Dr. Augustina Louise Nunez, and she's Puerto Rican. And she speaks about the grace of Jesus Christ is not a cheap grace. Cheap grace is the preaching of forgiveness without requiring repentance and restitution. Okay? As the theologian, she mentioned that Bonhoeffer taught us is what is unacceptable is to turn the house of God into a den of thieves. Okay? So now, there was also a man named Harold Recinos. Okay? And he spoke about Oscar Romero being assassinated. Okay? He said, taking up the cross. When the church hears the theory of the oppressed, it cannot help but denounce the social structures that give rise to and perpetuate the misery from which the cry arises. Christ is God's humility preaching to you, and Christ sided with the poor. Okay? There is also a Latino theologian named Robert Chao Romero, and he is the leader of something called the Brown Church. He is a Latino Asian theologian. Okay? And his ideas are that the Latino community was found in between the racial discourse of black and white. Okay? In the middle of anybody who feels in between. So Latinos challenged the colonialism, Jim Crow, and immigrant exploitation. And he spoke about Jesus himself as being a marginalized Galilean. Okay, so these are some Latino theologians with some ideas about Latino liberation. And I think it's important that we know some of their names and we begin to look up some of their content. Okay? Stay tuned for part 4.